Hi guys, we are here on Friday under our skin and we are at MATINA Square.
Mama told me not to come.
Oh, music!
Yes.
Yeah.
You remember that song?
Yeah.
Three Dog Night. They were a big band. Had a bunch of hits on AM radio, top 100 Billboard. One is the Loneliest Number. My favorite was Liar, a song called Liar.
Right. I don't remember hearing Liar. I might do, but maybe my grey cells have all died now.
Joy to the World.
Okay, yeah. Joy to the world.
Joy to you and me. Yeah. Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
Oh yeah. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Yeah.
But you had a lot of AM radio hits. Get Ready, A Rare Earth.
Yeah,
those that had the long version and the short version of Get Ready. Ringo Starr, It Don't Come Easy.
Mr. Ringo Starr from the Beatles. Oh.
One of my favorite bands, Chicago.
Ah, yes.
Beginnings. They did a remake of I'm a Man by the Spencer Davis Group.
Okay. I liked If You Leave Me Now.
Yes, that was a big hit.
Yeah, I remember dancing on a dance floor when I was young to that record. Maybe I shouldn't have been dancing because I was at somebody's wedding. But I don't know whether it was my wedding or somebody's family's wedding or it was a relation's wedding. But I think I was too young for me. But I remember dancing to it, and there was a young girl there called Raglan. Oh, beautiful. Yes, what can you do when you're young?
Woodstock.
Ah.
Although it was in '69, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, one of my favorite bands. They had a big radio hit with the song Woodstock.
Okay, so Crosby, Stills and Nash came later in the UK around 76, 77.
Really?
Yeah.
They were formed in '69.
Yeah.
And I mean, within 1 year, they were the top band in the U.S.
Right.
Because they had all these protest songs.
Okay.
At that time, right, protesting the Vietnam War was huge, was a big thing. So they played into that. They wrote all these protest songs.
Well, Dylan and Neil Young were huge in the UK then, coming from the States. And they were like these mythical gods after the Beatles, talking about life and all of the things that they'd actually dealt with and come through, as you say, through the protest era. Poetry to Music, I remember in the UK it was called. I wasn't too big into it, mainly because glam rock was coming into the UK around 72, 71, 72, 73, where it was all about makeup and platform shoes, huge great trousers, weird and wonderful colours on your clothes, and
the hair.
And the hair. That's when I got into Ziggy Stardust and David Bowie. Coloured my hair red when I went to school, made it spiky, got sent home.
Were you a wham bam thank you man?
I could be, yeah. I could have been a suffragette rebellion.
Yeah, suffragette rebellion.
So, yes.
All right, Major Tom, right?
Ah, huge, absolutely huge. Yeah.
Oh, well, what was the name of that song? Space Oddity.
Space Oddity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big hit.
Ground control to Major Tom. Huge.
Yeah.
It was rumoured at the time that David Bowie was going out with his lead guitarist, a guy called Mick Ronson. I don't know whether it was true.
I thought he had a girlfriend. The two of them would dress alike. Remember, they both color their hair, and so everybody started saying David Bowie was androgynous, right? Because him and his girlfriend looked alike.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell whether he was male or female.
Angie Bowie.
Angie, that was her name.
Yeah, Angie Bowie. Yeah, I met her at Hammersmith Odeon. It was the second concert I actually went to in the 70s. It was around 74, 75. The first one was I went to Charlton Athletic and I watched bands like Little Feats and Sensational Alex Harvey Band. The Who.
But even though this was 1973,
Yeah.
even though you had all these Billboard hits that would come up, Who's That Lady? The Isley Brothers.
Okay, yeah.
Had a great, Ernie Isley would learn from Jimi Hendrix, and he played a great Jimi Hendrix lead solo in that song.
Right.
It was a big hit.
Yeah.
And you had, of course, Deep Purple, Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
Another big hit.
Huge.
Drummers loved that song. Everybody wanted to play like, what was Ian Pace, I think.
Well, you used to play drums.
Yes.
Yeah.
I spent hours learning Smoke on the Water. Remember the beginning? The dun, 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 and then he'd come in with he'd come in with the drums. The drums would start up. You know.
Well, I could do the air guitar bit, but I couldn't do anything else musical. I tried. Yeah, I'm absolutely hopeless at musical instruments.
But I bring up 73 because this is when I went off to college, and at the same time, music started going to what was called FM radio, where you played, the DJs would play whole albums. You play a whole album side, and you could hear bands that you normally wouldn't hear on AM radio top 100, which played a rotation of the same songs hour after hour.
Yeah.
So you could listen to FM radio. Of course, you had to, tune in. AM was a different band. FM was a different band. But you could tune in, and you would hear, even though, for example, Yes, which was a progressive rock band, Roundabout was a big hit for them on AM radio. But you never heard the rest of their stuff. Starship Trooper, a lot long songs that were very complex and involved. You could only hear on FM radio.
The prog rock was starting to come through on FM, was it?
Yes, it was becoming very big. And then Yes also, so people would buy a Yes album, right? Just for the album, to hear all the songs, not just one, like Roundabout. They wanted to hear all the songs on that album. Plus, Yes had the advantage of the artwork. Remember, you bought a Yes album, it had this wild art on the front. Roger Dean was the artist.
He's come up with all those fantasy
floating rocks and wild
different animals.
Yes. He was made Yes a big band just from the artwork on the album covers.
I used to, in that period of time, I got into LPs. I wasn't into singles or 45s because I wasn't into the top 20. Top 20 in the UK always used to come out midday on a Tuesday. And it was always the 45s. And everybody used to get out of school, rush down to the record shop, listen to the top 20. I used to end up listening to, a bit like you just said, like FM, but we used to listen to radio station 105.5 Radio Luxembourg. I used to go home and listen to Radio Luxembourg on my little wireless, on my little radio. And we used to, around 8 o'clock until midnight, just used to listen to different groups and different bands from around Europe and around the world that were coming up. And that's, a bit like you said, Yes, Genesis, Uriah Heep. There were these groups back Turner Overdrive, I think it was called.
Yes, BTO. They were a Canadian band.
Yeah, huge. And I used to like, there was one record I used to like of theirs, and it used to drive me off my bloody wall.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, and then it was like, I always remember listening to Led Zeppelin, and at that time, Out Come Money. That record used to stick with the back of me.
Money? You mean Pink Floyd?
Pink Floyd, yeah.
Yeah, that was Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
I think Dark Side of the Moon is like the #1 selling album of all time. 50, 70 million copies of that album have been sold.
I wish I learned how to play some musical instrument. 50 million, I wouldn't mind having some of that.
Oh. Dark Side of the Moon was so many songs on that album. Time, On and On. That was a big hit on FM radio. You had Emerson, Lake and Palmer, ELP.
Yeah, ELP.
Oh, I love the Tarkus
Okay,
album. The whole song Tarkus took up one whole side of the album, but it was a great song.
There was a record LP that I bought. I think it maybe about my fourth or fifth LP. My first LP I actually bought was Ziggy Stardust by Dave Bowie, and my second one was Wings, which was Band on the Run, Paul McCartney. So that was my second.
That was a good song.
Yeah, and then I had another LP which launched Richard Branson's record label, which was a guy called Mike Oldfield.
Tubular Bells.
Tubular Bells. I never understood it. I thought it was going to be singing when I bought it, and it was all instrumental until it gets to the second side and it goes wow, makes this weird noises coming to the end of the LP, and then it just closes.
Well, speaking of instrumentals, how I got into fusion jazz or electronic jazz, because jazz almost never has lyrics. It's all instrumental, and they're movements. They're, where each member of the band they do a tune, and each member of the band gets to stand out. The drummer would do his section, the lead guitarist, the bass would all do their each little sets within the song, right? But I was primarily interested in it for the drummers, because I thought fusion jazz drummers were the best. So I was listening to Return to Forever, Chick Corea. Lenny White was the drummer at the time, a black guy. Amazing drummer. But the whole band was really very good. Who else did I listen to? Mahavishnu Orchestra. Billy Cobham was the drummer. Birds of Fire, the album. Wow, I thought that was great. And Billy Cobham started his own band. But that's why I liked fusion jazz for the drumming, because I was an ex-drummer, and that's what I would look for, is good drummers.
So that was so this part of the jazz was like more technical part of the music you were listening to, and it was drawing you into it?
Yeah. It's, fusion jazz remained popular for many years. It's still around, but not nearly as complex. It's gotten a little bit softer. Later years it became kind of cool jazz, or where you had FM radio stations that would play nothing but progressive or fusion jazz.
Right.
And you had artists, because the radio stations wanted music that a lot of people would listen to. That's what the advertisers wanted.
Right.
More mainstream, softer music. So it remained popular for many years. I mean, I kind of branched off and started getting into hard rock.
Okay.
Rush.
Oh, yeah.
The Canadian band Rush.
Right.
Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush, is amazing. He's one of the best drummers of all time. But that's why I got into Rush, is just for the drumming.
Well, in that period of time, I'm taking a Robbie Williams saying it was just play it. If you're going to play it loud. So everything I played was like a 10 on the radio, or it was on my little wireless with my headphones on. People thought I was a bit weird. I'd be sitting on the bus listening to music, and they were like thinking I was doing drugs or something like that. But it was, as I said, it was about Gary Glitter, David Bowie, Mark Bolan from T-Rex, Sensational Alex Harvey Band. There were all these bands that were going through the 70s, and they were all into this, dressing up and being this weird and wonderful looking group. But what I remember is it was hot that summer, and you could never wear makeup, and you could never wear the clothes that they were wearing on television.
Didn't glam rock eventually become hair bands, where it was all about how much hair and how poofed out the hair could get along with the costume?
I think so. Yeah, I used to follow. I followed a group called Slade, and there was a guy on there called Dave Hill who used to dress in a silver suit, and he had this long straight hair, as you said, like lots of hair. And I grew my hair long, and I remember cutting my fringe one day. I wet my hair, and I put my hand on my forehead, and then I just used the scissors to cut a straight line because he had like a pillbox look on the top of his hair. The problem is that when my hair dried, the ratio between my eyebrows and the top of my head was about 6 inches. So I looked some really weird, wonderful guy going to school with just all curly whirly hair down the side, and then my front hair went all spiky. The piss got taken out of me royally while I was at school. Because I was at school and I was getting into trouble, as I mentioned last week, it was another key for people to turn around and pick on me because I looked different with this new haircut. It didn't work. It didn't work one bit.
Well, school for me was now college.
Right.
I'd gone off, joined all my buddies at University of Nebraska in Lincoln, the capital. We all lived in a dormitory called Abel Hall, right next to Sandoz Hall, which was the girls' dormitory, which we thought was great. But
did you take your muscle car with you?
Yes, I did.
Oh,
believe it or not, I even rented, because parking was tough. They had these vast parking lots, but they were, a mile and a half away from the dormitory, so you had a long walk to get to your car. But there was a gas station right on the corner, and the gas station had actually made a private parking lot next to it and would rent it out to the students. And I thought my car was so valuable and important, I rented a private parking spot right there at the gas station. And of course, it didn't take long for the cops to know this.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But they knew that I was in that parking lot.
We have a new rebel in town.
Yes, they waited for me to, go blazing out of that parking lot down the street. And it was a long stretch of street in front of the dormitory. So I could really smoke the tires. I could slam second gear, third gear. By the time I got into fourth gear, down probably a half mile down the street, I'm well over 100 miles an hour.
Oh.
And the police were watching for me, so I had to be really careful if I busted off.
So
I did get a couple tickets there.
On with the prog rock, number 10. Smoke the wheels, arm out the window. Salina's going home.
Yes, maybe Deep Purple with Burn.
Oh, very nice, yeah.
She said Burn.
Instead of smoke on the water. Well, I never had a big muscle car. I just had a Triumph Herald. And the first thing I got to go in my Triumph Herald was an 8-track. So
yeah, I had a lot of 8-tracks.
Yeah, so I had this box that bolted underneath the dashboard with an 8-track on it.
I had mine mounted to a floor. It was considered anti-theft.
Oh.
You would have a key, and your big 8-track player would fit into a slotted bracket mounted on the floor.
Okay.
Lock in place, and then you take the key and unlock it. You could take the whole thing with you. Of course, now you're walking around with a big 8-track machine in your hand, but you could take it inside so somebody wouldn't break into your car and steal it, right?
Well, my 8-track was worth more than my car. So they'd have stolen that. Anyway, I bolted mine underneath, and the reason I bought 8-track over cassette, because it was cassettes at that time, LPs, I couldn't get my record player to stay stable in the car when I'm driving. It used to bounce across the vinyl. Cassette I didn't like, but 8-track I got for a deal, so I bought that, and I used to love it because you just used to plug it in, and it just used to kept running. It just kept going and going and going. Either the tape would break, or it would jam up inside.
You're right. I remember you didn't have to change it from side A or side B. It would just automatically play everything on side A and automatically switch to side B.
Yeah.
Then it get to B and it switch back to A. You could just let it run forever.
Yeah, and I got this 8-track, and the reason I got it is because it had this little LCD square in it with the numbers of the tracks it was running,
Yes.
and that was state of the art back in 73, 74.
We thought it was, yeah.
So I don't know. I used to like that 8-track. I used to like the car until my brother decided he was going to take out the engine, put a bigger engine in it and everything like that, and then he was out trialing it, test driving it one day because my brother was a mechanic, and it ended up as a tractor going across the field doing about 60 miles an hour, and the wheels fell off the bottom of it and the body panels dropped off of it because it was a Triumph Herald. It was like made out of Coke cans, so it's very, very fragile to drive and very fragile. But the engine, my brother wanted to get rid of the engine in it because it only had 100 brake horsepower, and my brother wanted to put something in there with about 150 brake horsepower, but the rest of it didn't get updated or upgraded, like no brakes, and yeah, it was a nightmare. But yeah, I remember fondly the 70s, the music, the different stuff that was going on at that time with the different pop stars. Most of them are dead now, apart from Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney. Gary Glitter, I think's.
I always liked McCartney's Junior's Farm.
Okay.
It's one of his few rock songs.
Yeah.
Also, Maybe I'm Amazed.
Right.
I thought that was a great song too.
I used to like. I got into a group at that time called Supertramp. They brought out this LP that was black with a jail cell on the front of it, and the record I liked on it was Dreamer. Dreamer, you're nothing but a dreamer. And it was very, a bit like you were talking about. It was about the band getting pieces of the music of their drum solos and their guitarists, but there was these weird and wonderful different harmonics going on within the record, which I liked.
Who did The Boys Are Back in Town?
Boys Are Back in Town. That's Thin Lizzy.
Yeah, there's a great band.
Yeah, and Golden Earring was their first hit.
I liked the Cowboy song.
Okay, yeah.
It started out really slow. I am just a cowboy,
Well,
lonesome on the trail.
I think there was a guitarist, Moore.
Yes. Wow, he was a Jimi Hendrix style
Yeah.
guitarist. He could do solos like unbelievable.
Well, he was part of Thin Lizzy,
Yeah.
and he went.
Gary Moore.
Gary Moore. He went solo after
He never made it big though.
Jeff Lynne. I think his name was Jeff Lynne. No, it wasn't Jeff Lynne. I can't remember the lead singer, but he passed away.
Phil Lynott.
Yeah.
Phil Lynott, the bass player. I think it was half black.
Yeah, with afro hair.
Yes,
dressed
big
in
afro hairstyle.
leather. Well, he went out with a girl called Forsyth, who was the daughter of Bruce Forsyth, and they were very, very, very religious at the time. And Phil Lynott was perceived to be Afro-American, Irish, bad boy.
But he was from Ireland, right?
Yeah, Northern Ireland.
He had an Irish British accent.
But they actually made this persona of this Thin Lizzy being about American black hard rock, and that seemed to stick in the British public. So wherever he went, it was it didn't go down too well.
I wouldn't. I mean, I like the band and I like their music, but I wouldn't call them American style hard rock. I mean, they certainly weren't like a lot of American bands, Grand Funk Railroad, or even maybe this is later, right?
Well, I think what you have to remember, back in the 70s, early 70s, like 72, 73, 74, the Broadcasting Society, BBC, was governed by strict rules. So if you had somebody that was perceived to be a dangerous person to the public or the youth of the day. They had to go on after 9 o'clock at night on television, and TV only run for 1 hour after 9 o'clock on BBC back in the 70s. So that's why a lot of people listened to Radio Luxembourg, because there was all of this different rock.
What became popular in the U.S. was outdoor stadium concerts,
Right.
where you could get 60, 80, 100,000 people packed into a baseball stadium or a football stadium. And then you would, of course, I actually went to a few of them. I remember seeing Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
That's something I would have
In
paid good money for.
1975 in Phoenix, Arizona, in an outdoor concert. Hotter than hell in Arizona. It was brutal sitting out in the, but it was a great show, and I still have the ticket stub to show that I've been there.
The thing is, we got into concerts back in when I was at school, and it became very, very difficult for me to get away from my parents, because I was 14 and 15 and I was trying to get to these concerts. And as I said, I went to see David Bowie at Hammersmith Odeon, and that was a revelation, because being a conservative guy or child coming from Horsham, I turned up in a pair of trousers and a shirt, and when I got there was people dressed up like they come from Mars, with Aladdin Sane face white out with a big zigzag across the face, red hair, all this stuff. So yeah, consequently when I went home the next day, that was it, red hair. And I didn't know how they dyed their hair red, so I just turned around and put boot polish in my hair.
Boot polish.
I just pushed it through my hair and spiked it all up, and now I went off to school.
Sound like No-Neck Ed with his mayonnaise in his hair.
Yeah. So
come to hustle a Filipina girl.
But it was going to concerts. I went to, as I said, Charlton Athletic. I went there and saw Little Feat came from America. A stunning band.
Yeah, they were good.
Brilliant. The music was just off of this world.
What did they do? Take the long road home. Take the long way home.
Yeah, and there was loads of stuff that kept coming in from the States that was really, really good music, and that's when I started listening to stuff around 74, 75 of the Eagles.
Yeah.
That's coming in, and then Fleetwood Mac around that time were coming through. I thought Fleetwood Mac were an American group, and it only turns out that
there's only two Americans.
Yeah.
Which actually says a lot about rock and roll at that time, right?
Yeah.
That you could combine a traditional or a regular British rock band, right?
Yeah.
And then put two Americans in it and become a huge success.
Yeah. Well, they became mega, didn't they?
They were up there with Peter Frampton. Remember Peter Frampton?
Yeah.
He had the hottest, biggest selling live album of all time.
Right.
And it was recorded at an outdoor concert in the U.S.
Yeah.
Do You Feel Like We Do?
Man.
That was a huge hit.
I think Frampton came back to the UK around about 76, 77, I can remember. He was there with his golden blonde hair and his tan. And he had these trousers that looked like somebody had actually painted them on and then ironed them in place. Don't know how he got all of his private bits into that pair of trousers, but yeah.
He'd wear this little waist coat that was open in the front, right?
Yeah.
He's always wore that same jacket and coat. The girls loved him.
I think the American rock culture was that you created this image, and that image stayed with you, and it all of a sudden became a branded image, which we know what branding is today. But then it was very iconic. I mean,
these guys were groundbreaking. They were making the rules up as they went along.
Yeah. I mean, I remember Slade, who went over to America, and they didn't do anything in Slade. The biggest record they actually cut is "Come On, Feel the Noise." And that was a Christmas song. But I think when you've got one guy dressed up in green and gold check suit, the other guy dressed in like a Baco foil suit, then the drummer around the back had loads of hair and he wore a string vest, I don't think the American public actually got what they were actually supposed to be doing as a branded group.
I think what it was, is you had to have a hit song on AM radio, top 100 Billboard.
All right.
Then you package that into your album, right?
Right.
Then your album was picked up on FM radio and played to death on. In fact, a lot of bands, what they would do is have a short version, like a 3-4 minute song.
Okay.
For AM radio.
Right.
FM radio would be the long version where
The one they like to play.
Yes, 15-20 minutes long. It'd take up a whole side of an album. But the FM radio would play it nonstop with no interruptions, no commercials or anything. And that made you a big hit, a big band.
Right.
Was to do it that way. So they were, and these guys were creating this. They were all making the rules up as they went along. But in 1973, and I'm in college, listening to all this music, you get the windows rolled down, the volume cranked all the way up, you know. We were living in the dormitory. First thing we did was go out and buy a little mini refrigerator and stock it full of beer. You had to have beer to study, right?
Yes.
You couldn't do any studying without beer.
The food of IQ.
And this meant also, this was just for the week, because on the weekends were the parties. A lot of guys would live off campus. They would rent an apartment nearby. There were all these houses that had been split up into apartment units. They were old houses built, 80 years ago. And now there was
dormitories?
They had taken these old houses, wooden houses, and the landlords split them up into individual apartments so they could make more money, right, than just renting the house.
Yeah.
And these were old houses, so middle-class American suburbia, they didn't want these old, they wanted the new suburbs that were out on the outskirts of the city, all the newer houses.
Okay.
So the college students would rent, and you could throw parties. You couldn't throw a party in the dormitory. They had what were called RAs. Each floor had its own RA, resident assistant, and he was in charge. It was usually an older student. They were in charge, and he earned money. He'd make money being an RA.
So he was an RA policeman.
Yes, he would keep order on the floor. No drunks running up and down the hall. Girls not allowed in the room after 10 p.m.
Oh, boring. Boring.
Didn't meant the rules. The rules were meant to be broken, right?
Well, that's it. That's what they're there for.
So we would go to these parties, and it wasn't just beer at the parties. There was hard alcohol. There was grass, weed, other stuff too.
Okay.
And I mean, the idea was, you would go to the party on Friday night or Saturday night. Of course, you're chasing girls at the party, but you got to get hammered, because really, getting hammered is the way you talk to girls.
Yeah.
Got a lot of courage in a bottle.
Yes. And you sweat a lot.
And then the best guys at doing this were in the fraternities, because these guys, generally speaking, in a fraternity, because you had to pay dues, you had to pay to be in the fraternity, and it wasn't cheap. So generally speaking, the frat guys, frat boys as we call them, their parents had money, and they were usually good-looking guys, and traditionally they were supposed to partner up with a sorority, right? And then you would have these nice little controlled parties between the fraternity and your sorority, where you could meet a girl, a nice traditional girl, right? But frat boys, sure, they would do that on the surface, but frat boys threw the best parties. If you thought the off-campus parties were wild, go to a fraternity party that wasn't sanctioned by the fraternity. Man, these guys knew how to throw a party.
Right.
Unlimited beer and drugs. And these guys would do wild and crazy things. I mean, they're up on the roof, jumping off the roof, drunk. They're out in the street, running up and down the street drunk. And it was on campus, right? So it was, the regular police couldn't come there. Off campus, regular police the neighbors could call the cops.
Okay,
right? And the regular police could show up and break up the party. Usually they'd come in the door and, they didn't show up till midnight, but they would walk in the door and say, all right, break it up. You guys got 15 minutes to shut it down. The neighbors are complaining, Whereas on campus with the fraternities, you had just the campus police, right? Okay. And the campus police, they were kind of lenient. They kind of allowed the frats to get a little wild and crazy.
And kick out.
Yeah.
And they knew what...
Eventually they would shut it down at 3 or 4 in the morning, but by then, everybody's so bombed and wasted that, you're past... I think did we mention this before? The movie Animal House.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Watch that movie. There's a lot of truth in that movie.
That movie sparked my end of my teenage years in the UK. That came out, and that turned out to be a whole different ball game for me. Bouncing along on a ladder, trying to look through a window, taking stuff to people's parties that you shouldn't be taking to their parties.
Well,
like a palm tree.
Animal House was about a frat that wasn't traditional.
Right.
Their fraternity was the low-life guys, the nerds, the guys that the regular fraternity didn't want. That's why they started their own fraternity for all these reject guys. But they knew how to party just like a regular fraternity, right? That's what the movie was so good at portraying.
Yeah, toga.
The wild craziness of a fraternity.
Yeah. I remember
John Belushi was great in that movie.
Well, after I left school, my first toga party I went to. One of the guys there decided to turn around and do a John Belushi trick with a Foster's 500ml can. But he didn't drink the beer. He just smashed his can into the top of his head, fractured his skull, his eye socket, broke the bridge of his nose, and he ended up going down to the hospital. He thought that was pretty cool. We all thought it was really, really bizarre and really stupid, but he'd watched Animal House. The next day we went down and watched Animal House to see what he was talking about. We knew what life was about in America, and we wanted that life in America back in suburban UK.
I had a good friend that was in a fraternity. Now, I remember his name too, John Sheeman. He'd been the star running back on the high school football team. So the girls, he had a lot of girls in high school. Now he's in a fraternity, and surprisingly, he liked us gearheads, right?
Okay.
So we had this whole crew of people from Bellevue that went to the university, and John still hung out with us gearheads, so he would invite us to the fraternity parties so we could get wild and crazy. So I can speak from personal experience at the fraternity parties. It was a great time, but it wasn't conducive to an education, right? I'm supposed to be there studying to get an education.
Yeah, but you got educated in life. The education of life is go to a frat party.
Every week.
Yeah. Well, I didn't...
And girls were the primary focus, not studying. You were after girls.
That's the life of a frat. I always wondered what frat party was always about. Now I have a better insight. A little bit more wild and wild and bushy than what we had in the UK.
I wouldn't have traded it for anything. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I'd do it the same way. Yeah. I had a hell of a lot of fun, because now, after university, and I only went 2 years to University of Nebraska.
Right.
I ended up, my parents convinced me to come to Tucson, Arizona, where they lived. They were retired in their retirement home.
Right.
And they wanted me to come down there and live. They said, free room and board. You don't have to live in the dormitory. You live right here at home. You can go to the University of Arizona and finish your education. And I thought, why not? Let's see what it's like. So I did. I went to Tucson, but after living in the dormitory, living in a home with your parents, no.
No.
No. That's a big mistake.
Well, I was finishing up at school, and then I was looking to go to work. I didn't go to university. The only time I went to college was to get my qualifications for cooking. But I finished up at school around 15. I went out on work experience. I did some work experience, and I went out to work. And that was from 76 going onwards. So
work is the word here.
yeah.
You've gone to work now,
Yeah.
but at a young age.
Yeah. Well, I've gone to work because the school wanted you to go to work to find out whether you liked the job, as I said in another
Right, but
vlog. But
we're
I never went
talking
back.
about working now,
Yeah.
and it's going to be work for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
No more partying, no more fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
People expected you to find a girl, settle down, have a family,
Yes.
become the norm.
White picket fence.
Yeah.
Two kids would be ideal.
That's it.
A wife for the years and years to come.
Yeah.
But work sucks.
It does.
It really does. And I'm out of college, and I'm going to hit it in the work world, which is coming up next week.
Yep. Next Friday, we're on to what we did as professionals in the workplace, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
Our likes and dislikes of work, and we'll go from there. So from Salina and Garry, Friday, MATINA Square. Take care. Love you all. God bless.
Bye.